finance her heroin addiction. The state stepped in, took the baby away, and handed temporary custody to Jenna's mom, passing the child from one addict to another. Then, just when it seemed things couldn't get any worse, Billy came back into her life. He assured Jenna he was a changed man, ready to be a faithful husband and loving father. Hell, the new and improved Billy even came bearing gifts, a passenger van with a kiddie seat strapped in back. But their kumbaya moment didn't last. As soon as the couple climbed into the van, they were right back to arguing again. You can pretty much guess what happened next, and if you guessed Billy plunging a screwdriver into Jenna's back, you would be correct. He shoved her out of the van and hit the gas as Jenna was punching him through the open window, causing the van to veer headlong into an olive tree. Jenna didn't bother checking on his condition. Instead, she ran off and called the police. Billy ended up behind bars on an assault and battery charge. Young love. So, that was the young woman sitting beside me at the OK Corral bar, the fire chief's daughter, who had already packed a lifetime into 22 years of hard drugs and violent abuse. As the drinks arrived in front of her, Jenna said to me, "The first time I ever saw you, you were on the bike in the parking lot at Mickey's Liquor Trade. Do you remember?" I shook my head. "Well, I remember you. You looked so confident. The way you held yourself with your head so high." I asked Billy who you were, and he said, "That's George Rowe." "Why? Do you want to fuck with him?" Then he hit me. She said, "I've heard things about you," she said after a moment. "Oh yeah? What have you heard?" "Well, it's not good," she said coyly. "Whenever I ask people about George Rowe, it's never like, 'Yeah, I know that guy.' It's more like, 'I hate that fucking guy,' or 'That dude used to sell me dope.'" She took another sip and looked at me hopefully. "Do you still sell dope?" "Not anymore," I answered, taking a pull on my bottle. "I got clean about 10 years ago. And now what? I own a tree service." Jenna played with her drink, then said offhandedly, "Do you have a girlfriend?" "Not really," I answered, which was a lie. I was seeing Christy at the time. Jenna set her half-empty glass on the bar and studied it a moment. "What are you doing here, George?" "You mean, in this bar?" She turned with a level gaze. "You know what I mean. I already told you. Billy wanted me to check on you." "That's all?" I thought for a moment, then said, "And he doesn't want you pressing charges." Anger flashed in her eyes, a look that, unfortunately, would become all too familiar. "He can go fuck himself," she hissed. She drained her glass and ordered another zombie. "You know you got a kid, right? I heard you have a little girl. Did you know Billy tried to kill her?" "When was this?" "Last year in Arizona, before the baby was born. He was cheating on me. I saw him go inside this tweaker pad with this chick. So I grabbed a pickaxe from the shed and started hitting his fucking Impala with it. I put holes all over the thing." Jenna paused as the bartender showed up with her drink. "People tell me I have a temper," she said, lifting the glass. "No shit," I said. "I get it from my mom. I remember she used to say to me, 'We don't need no stinking men because we are badass babes.'" She smiled at the memory and took a drink. "Where was I?" "With the pickaxe." "Right. So Billy comes running out of the house and chases me across the yard with the broom handle. I tried to climb a fence, but I was 7 months pregnant and couldn't make it. So I just sat on the ground and let him beat me. But then he started kicking me, so I decided I better run. When he caught me again, he started hitting me in the stomach with that broom handle. And the whole time he was screaming, 'You are not going to have that baby, bitch. You're not going to have my kid.'" Jenna lifted her glass in triumph, but guess what? I had his fucking kid. She took a healthy swallow, then paused to reflect. That asshole was always doing shit like that. Like this one time, he had me pinned to the floor of our trailer with one hand, and he's got a gun pointed at my face with the other. And then he started shooting. The bullets are hitting all around my head and ricocheting off the concrete slab under the trailer. I could smell my hair burning. That's how fucking close those bullets were. When he let me up, there were holes in the floor the shape of my head. "That's messed up," was all I could think to say. So the next morning, I grabbed my pink lady. That was this little gun I owned with the pink mother-of-pearl grip. And I straddled Billy while he was sleeping, pointed the barrel to his nose and said, "Good morning, motherfucker." I grinned at this. Should have pulled the trigger. I never got the chance. He grabbed the gun out of my hand and hit me in the head with it. Then he starts yelling at me, "Run, bitch. You got 6 seconds," and started counting. And I ran too, because I knew that sick fuck would kill me. I ran into the desert and hid behind a Joshua tree until I knew he was gone. I shook my head. It was just crazy. Thank you, sir, she said to me. May I have another? After we left the OK Corral, I took Jenna back to the shack in Via Vista. Old Joe came out of his trailer to introduce himself, but my date was shit-faced and made a lousy first impression. She's younger than Christy, Joe scolded when Jenna was out of earshot. What are you doing with the kid? I wasn't sure myself, but I had a pretty good idea, and it wasn't exactly a noble one. Hell no, I downed another glass of wild turkey. Then Jenna and I did the nasty all night long. The next morning, after I'd driven back to her girlfriend's place, Billy called from the detention center, anxious to know if I'd talked to Jenna about dropping the charges. Check this out, Billy. I swallowed my anger. I fucked her instead. Wait, what's that? Yeah, I did your old lady last night. Not only that, but I'm not going to ask her to drop the charges. How's that sound? The phone went silent a moment before Billy spoke again. Well, that sounds fucked up, George, he said bitterly. Not as fucked up as you. What kind of man are you anyway? Christ, I've never seen a woman beat up so bad, and she doesn't even own a decent pair of shoes. Figured I'd throw that one in for good measure. There was another long pause before Billy said, you know what? I'm okay with it, George. I probably would have done the same thing. I didn't know if the kid was serious, stupid, or just angling for another shot at getting those charges dropped. Didn't matter though. Whatever the reason, I was done with that asshole and hung up the phone. Over the course of the next few days, Billy tried calling back, but I refused to talk to him. Eventually, he took the hint, and that was that. That was the last time I heard from that son of a bitch, at least for a couple years anyway. Now that I was through with her old boyfriend, I had Jenna all to myself. In the following weeks, I was drawn to that girl like the slots at Saboba. I couldn't get enough, and before I realized enough was too much, it was too late. I'd invited her to share my home. Old Joe thought I'd made another mistake of Godzilla-like proportions. He still hadn't gotten over the fact that I was working with the feds. Now I was bringing a heroin addict into the apartment. Not only did he think my timing was incredibly bad, but according to him, Jenna was an out-of-control bitch. I don't get it, he said to me one day. What's the attraction? Well, the pussy's pretty good, I answered with a stupid grin. But Joe wasn't laughing. My friend thought I was a goddamn fool, being led by my dick instead of my brain. Not the first time he'd seen that behavior. You've got to learn to separate your wants from your needs, brother, he lectured me. You want that girl, but you don't need her, especially not now. Once again, the man had a valid point, but old Joe didn't know the whole truth. With Jenna, it wasn't just about getting into her pants. No question the girl was an all-pro in the sack. But like my decision to go under ATF, taking that damaged soul under my wing had less to do with her pussy than my past. Truth was, I understood the fire chief's daughter. We were birds of a feather. I'd fallen into drug abuse about the same age and remember wishing someone would intervene and save me from my own self-destruction. Not only that, but Jenna had been evicted from the tweaker pad where she'd been crashing and had nowhere else to turn. When you're using and abusing, you really don't care how your addiction impacts others, even those you love most. Every person that touched that girl's life had been put through hell. Her mom didn't want her, her dad didn't want her. Nobody on God's earth wanted that addiction around, except maybe her misery loves company junkie friends. If I didn't help that drowning soul, who would? So I tossed her a lifeline and dragged a crazy woman into my house. Right out the gate, it was nothing but drama. I quickly learned that trying to contain Jenna was like trying to wrangle a wild horse. You couldn't get a rope on her. And just when you thought you had that bitch corralled, she jumped the fence and off she galloped, looking for her next high. Of course, there wasn't far to go at first. I kept that untapped supply of cancer pain meds stockpiled in the medicine cabinet. And from day one, that girl was into him like a kid running amok. All that candy was at her fingertips now, and Jenna couldn't swallow it fast enough. Within a few months, the whole stash was wiped out. I guess, in that way, she was a lot like her mother, whose pill addiction began when Jenna was 13. One day, her mom was drunk and tried to move a pot of hot chicken soup from the stovetop to the fridge. The lid came off and the broth splashed all over her legs and feet, scalding them so badly she was checked into a burn unit for 2 weeks of skin grafts. The woman came out on the other side with scars on her legs and a taste for painkillers, spending days at home popping fentanyl and pounding whiskey. Once Jenna had swallowed my stock of cancer meds, the girl went looking for her next high. She didn't have far to travel. The hooker who lived in an apartment next door was also a speed and heroin freak. One heroin addict could tell another from a mile away, and Jenna identified that kindred spirit immediately. Not only were the pupils pinpoint day and night, but there was a smell that oozed from the body's pores, the smell of coffee grounds and chili powder, which was what the dope was cut with. Christ almighty, it was beyond ridiculous living with that woman. I could almost understand why Billy beat her. Okay, maybe that's a stretch, or maybe not.